Hi, I'm Jordan Lulich. This is the Lulich Corner, and today I get to sit down with Eric Jubeck from Superior One Roofing. We're going to talk about everything roofing today and talk about what a homeowner should expect going through that experience with a roofing company. Eric, first off, I just want to say thank you for coming on. Thank you for taking your time, volunteering, coming in the office to sit down and talk about roofing. I really appreciate it. Our audience really appreciates it. And before we dive in and start talking about actually roofing, can you tell us who you are?
Sure. Yeah. And thank you, Jordan, for inviting me out and being a part of this. So, looking forward to our questions here and kind of diving into it. But myself, very much a family man, so my wife and I, we have 5 kids. We're locals here in Sebastian, Indian River County. So, we just in that phase, most of our kids are younger, 3 to 12. And, so all the activities, the sports, and just kind of keeping them busy. Summer break just started. So,
Yeah.
obviously, spending as much time as I can with the family and enjoying ourselves. But because we're, kind of family oriented, home ownership, real estate, protecting our assets is also, very important to us as well. So it's kind of like my background, if you will, or what makes me so passionate about this.
Awesome.
Yep.
And so we actually had the opportunity, a few months ago, and we talked a lot about client experience.
Yes.
And so, a lot of people own a home, right? But not as many people have to go through the experience of replacing a roof,
Yes.
or even a repair on a roof. So, from start to finish, what does someone expect? Like, what does that process look like? What's that experience look like for a homeowner?
Yeah. So, and to your point, not a lot of people have probably experienced it, but that's changing, right? So, the Florida insurance industry, we all know how chaotic that is at the moment. A lot of roof replacements are being kind of forced by the insurance industry and real estate transactions, how that all kind of comes together. So, more and more people are starting to experience it, unfortunately. And the problem is, like you said, like most people, they probably haven't anticipated it
Mm-hmm.
budgeting wise, kind of setting the funds aside, preparing for the cost. We all know how the economy's been for the last however many years, especially since COVID and inflation. So nothing's gotten cheaper, right? Everything just keeps getting more and more expensive. So it's definitely a large talking point that everybody needs to think about and prepare for. And the biggest reason for that is, the roof. Everybody just thinks it's a roof, no big deal. But if you really like take a step back and understand the perspective, like the roof is everything. So everything you have in your home, right? So all the furniture, all the appliances, all the electronics, all your assets, your kids' pictures and school albums and all the stuff that you save, your personal belongings, they're all protected by the roof. So ultimately,
Mm-hmm.
if that roof is not secure, and unfortunately, there's been plenty of people that have been on the other side of that. Hurricane season, we're just coming upon it. Storms are happening. The last thing anybody ever wants to go through is having a failure with their roof, and next thing you know, everything that's underneath it gets damaged or destroyed, and that's life changing, life altering there that I wish nobody goes through. So
Yeah, the
it's a
roof
big
over your
deal.
head. It's a big deal.
Protects
Yeah,
all the other assets underneath of your home.
absolutely.
So very important.
Well, it's June 1st was this week.
Yep.
So we're now in hurricane season.
Correct.
Um I've never really thought if, and I don't know if this is just my ignorance or if this is just maybe it's more common with people, but I've never thought, hey, I need to do something for my roof and prepare because now I'm in hurricane season. But there might be some practical tips that as a homeowner I could benefit from now that we're in hurricane season and we're more susceptible to storms and roof damage. And so what should I be thinking about as a homeowner?
Absolutely. And this is very important this time of year. So, getting ahead of the curve, making sure that we're prepared. We know that hurricane season typically doesn't start really ramping up until August or September traditionally.
Right.
So, we're still in that window. It's important to get out and get in front of it. A few things deferred maintenance is a big item. When we do roof inspections, it's very all over the place. You can get on a 10-year-old roof and it looks pretty shot, right? Or you can get on sometimes an 18 to 20-year-old roof, shingle roof, and actually it looks like it still has quite a bit of life left in it. So there's no defined variable in that aspect as far as like age being the dictator.
Hmm.
But there's so many things that get uncovered during an inspection as far as deferred maintenance wise, pipes that, aren't properly flashed or sealed, exposed nail heads starting to come up on ridge caps. So there's all these other things that can create minor issues that ultimately snowball into a much larger concern. And especially when we start getting heavy rains like we just had the other day,
Yeah.
that's when things start popping up. So it's really important to have inspections done, kind of have a professional up there to look over those things, make sure if there's any deferred maintenance that needs to get addressed, it gets addressed now, prior to all the storms rolling through. And then the second thing is insurance. I spoke about that before. such a major concern, here in Florida and the insurance industry, kind of forcing everybody's hands. If we have a storm come through in the unlikely scenario that a homeowner, suffers damage, they need to get involved with their insurance company, it's always important to have, the photos beforehand. So that's another thing about the inspections we kind of pride ourselves on, is making sure we have timestamp photos so we can verify what your condition is now, so that once a storm does pass through, if there is ever a scenario where you've experienced damage, you kind of have the proof, right? So now you have timestamp photos showing up, this is what the roof condition was like, this is how the home was prior. And
Mhm.
then if there is stuff that comes up afterwards, that's documented, and you can kind of, back your claim and make sure that it gets approved and you get properly taken care of by having that initial inspection and just kind of eyes on it firsthand, if that makes sense.
So yeah, we have like for homeowners who are buying a home and they're financing it, or really I recommend for any homeowner who's buying or a potential homeowner who's buying a home to have an inspection, inspect the roof, look at the roof, make sure you know the quality. But lenders are going to require insurance. In order to bind insurance, you have to have that 4 point, that wind mitt, that insurance during the due diligence phase of your home
Hmm.
purchase. And so, what should buyers be thinking about, when they're looking at homes? Is it a red flag if you have a 25-year-old roof? Is that a red flag? Should you be thinking that you're probably not going to be able to get insurance, or if you get insurance, it's not going to be very good? Or should you be looking at, non-shingle roofs? I mean, what from a buyer's perspective, what do you think? How should a buyer approach looking at a home and evaluating the roof?
Yes, I mean, I could probably answer this question and speak, the next 2 hours over it, because there's so many different variables and talking points that I kind of work through with this. But buyers should absolutely be concerned because, the large majority of transactions are not cash anymore; they're
Right.
financed, right? And like you brought up, lenders, they require that insurance policy to be bound in order to be able to close and fund the loan. So all of that's so important to what we do. We're in three different realtor associations, so we're very heavily involved in that space. Being part of real estate transactions and having to replace roofs or do roof repairs in order to have closing, consummate and take place. So buyers specifically, if the roof is, anywhere over about 12 to 15 years old at this point, they should absolutely prepare for the worst. The unfortunate scenario is most of the time, even when they're in their due diligence period, they may not know that the roof has to be replaced right away because that wind mitt and 4 point has to get done. And it's not until after they've had those insurance inspection reports done, sent to their insurance agent to find out whether or not a policy can be bound. Sometimes that creeps up late in the inspection period, or unfortunately after that inspection period. So that's one of those things that, we get involved in a lot because that pops up. Seller wasn't preparing to have to, cover the replacement of a roof. Buyer was hoping that they would get insurance, have a policy bound, and unfortunately, here we are 2, 3 weeks into the transaction, and the insurance agent can't bind a policy. Means the mortgage can't get funded, and then all of a sudden we're having to kind of jump in and work those things out. So something that buyers need to be prepared for. That's kind of a variable that exists. So if you're over that 12 to 15 year mark, definitely prepare. Prepare for the worst. It's always great to have an estimate. Have that inspection done during the inspection period. We'd love to come out and do that for you. Provide estimates even before you submit an offer, right? So if you're
Hmm.
getting ready to submit an offer on a home, let us do at least an initial estimate. I'll get you some quick numbers so you can at least have a ballpark figure of where it might land if the roof does have to get replaced. And then that way it can be properly negotiated out and everybody's kind of expecting, in case it does happen, how to move through that, if that makes sense.
And talking with realtors, I do see the roof often becomes a point of negotiation. So you have an older roof, sellers asking a certain price. Hey, I'll pay this price, but I want you to put on a new roof before closing. Right?
Yeah.
That's not uncommon. I've seen that. And so,
Yes.
or hey, I'll give you a credit so you can put our roof on after closing. Right? That's
Yeah.
like another common negotiation strategy that I see. And so,
Absolutely.
has your team ever been in the situation where you're installing or doing repairs to a roof before closing?
Absolutely. So it's the most common, pre-closing, right? So we do different styles, pre-listing sometimes where sellers fully anticipate and know that the roof is going to need replacement in order to secure the proper buyer and make sure that they can, get the proper price, proceeds from the sale that they like. it's in their best interest a lot of times if they have the ability to do it before they even list it or early on the listing period. But a lot of times it's, the majority of the time we're under contract, so buyer, seller, everybody's under contract, everything's lined up, and we get in, we do the roof prior to closing. It's called paid out at closing is how we structure it. And basically we'll just come in, have everything done ahead of time, wait until the sale takes place, and the title attorney will go ahead and pay us out of the proceeds of the sale. That is the most common
So they don't
scenario.
have to come out of pocket, which
It
is
does not have to
nice.
come out of pocket. And the other thing is post closing too, because there are some insurance carriers that will give a grace period. So there is situations. I just finished one up, a week and a half ago, where it was a post closing install where some carriers, they will allow usually about 30 to 60 days post closing until the buyer has to put the roof on. The only thing is that project contract with the roof has to be done prior to closing as far as having it lined up,
Mhm.
but then the install can take place post closing. And same thing, a lot of times what we'll do is title attorneys will set up an escrow agreement, holdback agreement, where they'll just kind of hold the funds from the sale in escrow.
Yep.
And then after we put the roof on post closing, same thing, they'll go ahead and release the escrow to us once everything's completed and we have the roof on for the buyer after they've already taken ownership. So multiple ways we work around it. We do it all. We're heavily involved. We do a lot of this as far as these types of transactions. So we'd be happy to help anyone that needs with it. So
And I know you're here to talk about roofing, but
yeah.
what type of impact do you think that aged roof has on the value of a home? I mean, are you what type of like can you are there any parallels to, hey, replacing a roof and like it's driving value or it's losing value by not replacing a roof before closing? Like, do you see those details and the impact that makes for homeowners?
Absolutely. I mean, there's no tangible like number you can really throw at it as like a percentage or dollar value, but it absolutely exists because it's all perceptions, right? So buyers looking at homes that have older aged roofs that there may be a concern it needs replaced. A lot of times they'll shy away from it, right? Or they won't even look at that home, or maybe they'll obviously ask for more concessions or a lowball offer, expecting that they're going to have to replace the roof post closing. So that definitely diminishes the value, if you will, if you have an aged roof and you're trying to sell your home. And then on the flip side, if the roof is brand new, it absolutely adds a ton of value because now buyers know it's turnkey. They don't have to worry about the insurance issues. They're not having to worry about closing on the home and then getting a notice of non-renewal within the next year or two, which happens sometimes with those older age roofs. So it really like lifts that burden off of buyers' shoulders, and that absolutely in turn makes that home more valuable when it hits the market. There's a clear, no doubt about it, that happens.
It does
So
happen. In Florida, especially over the last, 5, 6, 7 years, insurance has been a hot topic. Roofing companies also have been a hot topic.
yes.
So I think it's worth us at least talking about and educating people. What separates a roofing company that you don't want to work with a quality roofing company?
Many things, right? So again, we could talk about this for hours probably, but a few things I'll say, speaking on the insurance side, roofing contractors legally, we're not allowed to solicit insurance claims, right? So that's one of the big red flags that I will say, especially as we're entering this time of year. If you have those guys that are door knocking and soliciting you to file a claim,
Hmm.
big no no, don't trust it. A lot of times they're not even local, proven operations. A lot of times they come from out of area, maybe Central Florida, South Florida, et cetera, and kind of prey on the storm chasers, if you will.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a big red flag. Make sure if you do, have concerns from an insurance standpoint, always find a local reputable company that has reviews and proven track record, and you'll know right away by the way that they position themselves or offer things to you whether or not they seem to be legitimate or if they're kind of sounds too good to be true, right? Which that's what a lot of those scammer door knocker types will do, these companies that are illegitimate. The other side of it is their operation. So for us, we take a lot of pride in customer service. Superior One, it's all about superior service levels and experience. Our reviews, Google reviews, kind of stand up and kind of tell our story for us, because all the feedback's there from all of our homeowners that we've have trusted us. But a big thing is our processes. So we have dedicated project managers for every install. We have dedicated project coordinators that handle all the permitting and scheduling and all that. there's a whole team behind us. So it's not just me that, face to face and, just only speaking to me. You're speaking to an entire team. It's a well-oiled machine. We're very driven by our processes and making sure that it's an excellent experience. Shingle roofs, we try to get done in one day, as long as the, right size job. Sometimes it might bleed over to a second day, but that's our ideal scenario, by the way that we utilize third-party inspections. So there's a lot of things that we do in our processes that just make the experience for homeowners much more enjoyable. And that's kind of what separates us from a lot of other roofing contractors as well. Hopefully that kind of answered your question,
Yeah,
but
I think it does. I think you hit on something when talking, when I talk to insurance agents about roof claims, one of the first things that they mention is, hey, for what insurance companies looking at this to see, and the first questions that they're going to ask is, did the roofing company knock on your door? And
yes,
so you kind of hit on that point, as far as like what companies do you want to avoid versus what's a quality roofing company. And so I think that, in the event that you do have a claim, they're looking to understand, how did you get to know this person? Like,
right,
is it someone from a reputation perspective, someone local? Is it someone knocking on your door? So I think that was good advice as far as being cautious.
yes.
And then I also think like it's important that you understand the team behind. Is it a one person show, or is it a whole team? Because whether it's roofing or whether it's a general contractor, one of the most important things is making sure that the progress moves on efficiently
Yes.
and in a timely fashion, rather than being scattered in many different ways and not being able to complete the work that's necessary in a timely manner.
Yeah, yeah. Those one man band shows, sometimes it's hard. They're wearing so many different hats at once, and
Yeah.
the client experience suffers. Sometimes, especially this time of year, you get weather delays. We have storms. Afternoon thunderstorms are very common.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of moving parts to that sometimes. And if a company is kind of spread too thin, it makes it very difficult for them to accomplish everything they need to. Versus a company like ours, where it's large, there's a lot of hands, a lot of people involved that can kind of jump in and make sure everything continues to go smoothly. So
Well,
yeah.
if somebody listening wants to reach out to you, wants to talk to you, wants to learn more about Superior One, how do they find you and how can they contact you?
Absolutely. So Google for the company Superior One Roofing. That's number one, because not only will you be able to look up the contact information for our office, but you'll see all the Google reviews. So I think last time I checked, we're about 460, just shy of 500 Google
Nice.
reviews, 4.9 stars. That speaks volumes for itself from our thousands of homeowners that have entrusted us. you know they're spending it's a big ticket item. They're spending a lot of money. The days of, not that it doesn't exist, but sub $10,000 roofs, that still exists on the smaller homes. But I'd say the fair share of roof costs are usually 15 to 20,000, or even higher, 25, 30, 40,000 with metal roofs. It can get up there pretty quickly. Beachside, some of those roofs can exceed six figures, right? So these are not cheap purchases. So if somebody's upset, they're going to be the first to tell everybody, right? They're going to speak it to the world. They're going to tell friends, neighbors, coworkers, you name it. So if we weren't doing what we stand up for and believe by providing superior service, Google would tell you, right? Those
Absolutely.
complaints would be there.
Yep.
They would exist, but we're near perfect, 4.9 stars with hundreds of reviews. So definitely check us out on Google. You'll be able to see that. And then, we also have our Facebook page, of course. We're pretty active there. Superior One Roofing Florida is the handle for that. And then myself personally, I'm also on Facebook. So, I'd love to, have people connect with me there. I have a lot of, real estate related stuff going on, a lot of agents and realtors I'm connected with. Anybody in the community that wants to connect with me, please, I'd love to do that as well. And then that way, get a little bit knowledge about me, who I am, who I stand for as a family man, and know that I'm somebody that's here local, living in the community right here, Indian River. And, that way we can kind of start that relationship and continue to grow from there.
Cool.
So,
Well, thanks for coming on, Eric. We appreciate you listening. I'm Jordan Lulich, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
thank you.